What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, joined by Andy Herman of the Pack-A-Day podcast, ready to talk about a 27-20 victory. That's right, Andy Herman. It is Monday this week, and it is a victory Monday. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It feels like everyone just needed to win. I know that there's still a lot of frustration with some of the stuff that happened in this game, understandably so, but it does feel like a little bit of a different day, covering the Green Bay Packers. Everyone's
pep in the step.
A little less clenched today than it maybe was a week ago at this time. So I'm happy about that at least, and we've obviously got a lot to discuss. We
do, and I'm going to start there. The fact that there were plenty of things to get people's kind of dander up, right? And yes. I really appreciated the tweet you put out. I think it was last night where you said a win's a win, but ... and then proceeded to list and I was going to have you read it. I was going to say, Andy, have this tweet prepared so you could read it off.
Today already, so I can't.
So I don't want to belabor that fact, but there were plenty of mistakes and plenty of things they had to overcome. My headline for the gut reactions was Packers overcome themselves. It's very clearly a game where a lot to work on, a lot of tape to look at. But I want to start up top with Jordan Love because, my God, what a game. And being there in the stadium, watching him down in and down out, leave the game due to injury, thinking, all right, here we go. We're going to have a very different type of game because we're going to have Malik Willis in there. And then Jordan Love comes back and just continues to ball out, even with protection issues, guys dropping almost every other pass, it felt like. I mean, this is one of Jordan Love's best performances in a Packers uniform, no doubt.
Best and just one of my favorites because of all the things that you just mentioned.
Right.
There is a cool part of when you see the 5 touchdown, 400-yard stat lines and things like that. There's others when things just aren't quite going the way that you would ideally like them to, and you find a way to rise above and just be better than it anyway and go out and win a game. And that's what I felt like this one was for Jordan on a day where he gets knocked out of the game for a period of time. And then kudos to Malik Willis for what he did in that short stretch of time. But, Willis goes out, does what he does, and then Love comes back in. And I'm just waiting for Love to struggle, for this storyline to come out of they score the touchdown with Malik Willis, and then Jordan comes back and the offense can't do anything. And it's like, oh, here we go. And then Jordan proceeds to, despite all the drops and despite the leaky play on the offensive line that continued, to just go out and with the sore shoulder, to go and really will this team to victory in the second half. And especially on that final drive where there was not a field. If they would have kicked the field goal from the 1 yard line, I don't know that I would have felt comfortable with that made field goal, where it felt like you had to have a touchdown to take the lead, even though you were only down by a point, to go and lead that drive. The huge play to Savion Williams. Kudos to Savion Williams for that play as well.
Outstanding.
But through the wind, to cut through that, to get a ball exactly where Savion Williams needed it to go and make a play, just while buying time off his back foot, just clutch play after clutch play. This was one of my favorites, that if you look at the box score, it's not going to look like the sexiest thing ever, but he balled out and really willed that team to victory.
And what's interesting is it seems to coincide, and you don't ever want to make definitive statements here, but it does seem to coincide with a game plan that very specifically asked him to work downfield a little more, work the intermediate stuff a little bit more. And now, again, there were drops, there were problems, but they got him out on the perimeter on a boot play at one point. They used a shallow little crosser, something to beat the blitz at one point. Some of the stuff that we've been talking about and asking for from LaFleur and the offensive coaches, it felt like this was a very specific kind of turn when it comes to the offense and their approach. Now, who knows? We know we have a Vikings team coming into Lambeau on Sunday, very pressure-oriented. They like to do a lot of different things, and maybe they go horizontal again, But for this one game, it felt like, okay, we're ready to maybe open it back up a little bit for Jordan.
I don't know what those conversations internally would have looked like to get to that point. I'd have to imagine that at some point, Jordan can go to Matt and say, trust me, I have 3 interceptions on the season. I know the offense. I know these receivers. Our running game's not working the greatest right now, to say the least. I know that protection is a little bit of an issue. I can avoid the rush. I can make plays. I'm going to take care of the football. Just trust me. And I don't know, again, what that looked like, or maybe he didn't even need to say that. But Jordan has earned the right to QB this team as far as they're going to be able to go. I think they're going to have to do that, especially now with Josh Jacobs a little bit banged up as well.
Right.
And it was just nice to see an offense that what I think played to Jordan's and this team's strengths. And kudos to you from, I think it was a couple of weeks ago of like, stop coaching the team you wish you had and coach the team that you have.
Right.
And it felt like in this game, offensively, they coached the team that they had and they went out and they played a much better brand of football, which leaves you a little bit excited of maybe where this offense can go from here.
Yeah, if they can build on some of those things, it would be great. Now, we've mentioned a number of times already, but let's dive into it. The play of the offensive line, it's funny because coming into this game, we talked a lot about the fact that the Giants have been putrid against the run. And certainly the Packers were able to run the ball at times in this game, as you thought they would, right? And the thing is, you look at Sean Ryan early in that game, kind of settling in and welcome to the center position. Here's one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the game for you to go against. And that very clearly played out at times.
Yes.
We're kind of on the run almost instantly after receiving the snap. But I will say, as the game went along, I do think they kind of settled in, right? I don't think it was ever like perfect, but they seem to. And that's, a group of pretty formidable pass rushers. I know Burns had a couple of opportunities there, and certainly it wasn't perfect. But I thought on balance, this yet again, another configuration of the offensive line seemed to hold up all right, and at least well enough for Jordan to operate as the game.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. Certainly not a dominant performance up front, but like a serviceable performance, especially against guys Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter. Like they've got some players up front. I thought they did enough to run the ball. Now, again, it's one of the league's worst run defenses. Run defenses. Do I wish they would have, maybe had a little bit more? Sure, maybe. But Josh Jacobs goes out. I can understand that. And then in pass protection, that's where the Giants can thrive. Green Bay went, dropped back to throw with depth in a variety of different situations, including that key third down play, and protected Jordan for what seemed like, minutes on that specific one. Right. So I thought on the whole, they did what they needed to do to win that game. Still things to clean up. Yeah, I talked about it with Mike Wall, the same thing of like, hey, you get to start at center. Oh, by the way, it's against Dexter Lawrence. It's like, a baseball player where like you get into a new position or like a pitcher having to go in the outfield. And it's like, well, hopefully they won't hit him, like hit it that
ball
way.
Right to him.
right. Ball right to him, one after the other. It's like, hey, you get to start at center. Well, hopefully it's an easy, you get Dexter Lawrence. Fantastic. Wonderful. And Lawrence got the best of him a few times, which Lawrence is apt to do to just about anyone. But on the whole, I felt like Ryan held up well, and it didn't really feel like there was a huge drop off on the offensive line play from what we've seen in weeks past.
Very much agreed. And again, it was enough for Jordan to operate, which is essentially at this point what I want to see out of a team that has been so inconsistent up front. But we've talked a lot about the drops. What's frustrating too is the downs that some of these happened on. Lots of third down drops, something that plagued them last year, And then, man, Luke Musgrave, talk about probably wanting to burn the tape, and it's kind of interesting that he barely plays in the second half after kind of all the problems you saw him have in the first half. I don't think this is the end of Luke Musgrave by any stretch of the imagination, but they got to figure out how they want to utilize him, because using him on some of those like dart routes, like outside in the flat or whatever, like that's just not his game.
Throw it into the stands. Just throw it into the stands.
Seriously, right? I mean, I'm not. I agree. Definitely.
It's interesting. If nothing else, once Kraft went down, it was clearly Luke Musgrave's spot. Like he got the lion's share of the load in the last game and in this first game, in the first half of this game. And now I think he lost that opportunity. I don't think he's anywhere near the unquestioned now number one tight end in the absence of Tucker Kraft. I think this is going to be a competition. I talked to Mike about this as well. Like, I don't know if you can do anything in the modern NFL, but Green Bay's also got to figure out a way right now that they don't have the tight ends to go out and run the stuff that they really enjoy running with their tight end packages. They just don't. We'll see what Wiley can do. He's an interesting player.
He had a good game. I thought he had a good game. I mean, he wasn't a superstar or anything, but he's intriguing at least. Yep. Yeah.
But I don't know if you need to go, whether it's sixth offensive lineman instead, go to running backs rather than a running back and a tight end. Maybe do some old fashioned Jerry Glanville run and shoot. I don't care at this point, but like you might need to evolve this offense in a way that the tight end's a little bit less of a factor, because that was ugly.
Yeah, it was hard to watch at times, but again, with Wiley, I think, and Fitzpatrick's more than serviceable. We'll see what they do there. You mentioned the extra offensive lineman. I got to tell you, being in the stadium, I don't know what it sounded like on the broadcast, but man, you could have, you know, gotten very rich if you got a dime for every time you heard the referee say number 70 is reporting as eligible. I mean, they spammed the hell out of that kind of idea, right? And I
Yep.
thought for the most part, it seemed to help and open things up, and it seemed to work, for lack of a better term. And I do wonder if that's something we see quite a bit more of as these games go along here. I think, especially, you know, weather turning again. I talked about the Vikings coming in, lots of pressure, and a team in the Packers that's had trouble moving the ball on the ground. I think Kennard could have really found himself a niche here on this offense.
I really like the extra offensive line, formation and just bringing in the jumbo package. Something I talked about before they did it, I think a couple weeks ago, of just adding that extra wrinkle of, hey, how are you going to defend it? Are you going to go in base defense? Or are you going to stay in nickel? If you stay in nickel, all right, we feel pretty confident. At least we should feel confident with 6 offensive linemen going against your nickel alignment that we're going to be able to run the football. You bring in base, we still have, potentially 3 wide receivers, depending on what you're looking at and how you lined up out there. It just adds a little bit of complexity to what teams have to sort of game plan against for Green Bay. And again, some of the looks that you're going to get from those teams, rather than right now when Green Bay's going like 12 personnel, teams are just staying in nickel defense.
Yes.
They don't care. They're just like, you can't run the ball anyway. Why are we going to put a third
Right.
linebacker on the field?
Right.
So we don't need to. We can just stay with our nickel package, and your tight ends aren't going to beat us in the run game or the passing game. Do all the 12 personnel you want. If you're, the opposing defense right now, they're happy to see 12 personnel from Green Bay. So just think it adds a little bit of something different, gives you another run blocker and or pass protector in that situation. And I would like to see more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Turning around and looking at the defensive side of the ball, very curious performance from the defense, I thought. The fact that they gave up their first quarter points. I know it's their first quarter touchdown, but I think it's their first quarter points of the year. And then the fact that, you look at how the Giants wanted to operate. They were essentially running the Panthers playbook, right? They wanted to run the ball. They wanted to take the air out of the game. They wanted to limit possessions for the Packers. And in some instances, in some cases, they were pretty successful, right? And it's so weird to see the performance we saw against the Eagles on Monday night and then turn around and watch just an inability to get the quarterback and get him off the spot. I know Micah had the great 4th down sack, but man, the neutering of the pass rush was kind of, I don't want to say alarming, but it was not expected. I know the Giants obviously have some talent, but I thought for sure the Packers were going to be able to get after Winston with 4 guys, and that just did not happen with any kind of regularity.
They need more from Wyatt and Gary at the moment. Those two.
Those are the major culprits. Yes,
big time. And getting LVN back, I think, should definitely help. But somebody's got to help out Micah Parsons a little bit here and take some of the pressure off of him, because it feels like it's Micah against the double or triple team or bust.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
And it doesn't feel like anyone else is getting home. So that's a problem. I am struggling to put a perfect analysis on this Packers defense, because I watch every game, as you do and we all do, and there's different levels of frustration as you're going through and watching the defense in these games. And you're just like, it doesn't quite feel right. You're not getting the big explosive plays. You're not getting turnovers. You're not getting sacks. You're allowing some of these really frustrating 3rd and 4th down conversions where you have the ability to get off the field. It doesn't always pass the eye test or the sniff test. And then you get to the end of almost every single one of these games and you check the box score. Yep. And you're like, this one's like, the last one is like, well, they allowed 13 points. They allowed 16 points. They allowed 10 points. It's like, all right, but you lost. It's like, those were winning performances. This one, you look at it, you're like, yeah, you allowed 20 points. You had 2 turnovers, technically, if you include the last play of the game. Mm-hmm. You had 2 sacks on the day. Jameis Winston had 201 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. That's a win. They allowed about 3.7 yards per carry. All right, that's a win.
That should be a win.
You look at everything in totality, you're like, oh, that's just a winning performance, like 90 times out of 100. But in the game, it just feels so freaking frustrating at times. And I get that's part of modern NFL defense, but it just always leaves you wanting a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you look at the way they've kind of kept a top on offenses, right? I mean, nobody can go downfield on the Packers. Like the
No,
most they can do is maybe like that 15-yard in or whatever
it's
that
about it.
will be available because the safeties are playing deep, what have you, especially on early downs. But man, to your point, you look at it after the game, and well, there were no explosive plays. I think the biggest play the Giants had was when Edgerrin Cooper should have had the running back for a
In a
loss there
loss.
at the end of
Yep.
the first half when they're going down and they have that screenplay. But outside of something like that, like there are dropped interceptions. I mean, how many times did they have their hands on the ball in this game and they just couldn't come up with it on both
Yep.
sides of the ball, really? So, but yeah, in the moment, it's incredibly frustrating. But at the end of the contest, it feels
It's a
you
win.
look at it and you're like, that all makes sense. But it's, I think it's mostly frustrating because of what you're talking about, the inability to get off the field on those third and or fourth downs, because the Giants were content to go like 3 yards a carry. They were more than happy, and they kept doing it because A, it's bleeding clock, and B, they're going to get into a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2, and that's pretty manageable, and they're going to go for it, and they're going to convert. And I just feel like I keep waiting for Halfley to flip some kind of switch where all of a sudden he's going to surprise an opponent by being overly aggressive. But if you don't need to, in the kind of balance and the great scope of things, you obviously shouldn't and don't need to. But I do wonder if that's a kind of card he's waiting to play. If there's a particular opponent that all of a sudden they go totally against type. I mean, probably not, but I
Maybe.
feel like that might be around the corner at some point here down the stretch.
Maybe against JJ McCarthy this week would be Caleb Williams might be another one coming up too.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, they had great stuff for Jared Goff in that first game. So hopefully they do it again. I just think, not to get super nerdy here, you might appreciate this. I don't know how many other people are going to. I just feel like the NFL has really borrowed from soccer in the fact that, you see defenses are just
Right.
playing behind the ball. And once you get into that final third of the field, that's when we're going to play defense.
We're going to be so packed in. And
first
yes.
2/3 of the field, you can have as much possession as you want. You guys have fun out there. You go have fun. Once you get it on in that final third, we're going to attack you. We're going to take it away, and you're not going to be able to get points. And it just almost feels like, oh, you guys want to run the ball and have possession that first 2/3 of the field. You guys have fun. We don't think you can do that. We don't think you can do that. Run the ball as much as you want. You're not going to get explosive. You're not going to score those big plays. And as soon as you get inside the 20-yard line, we're going to shut you down. We're going to force you to kick a field goal. And or even if you score a touchdown, we don't think you can do that 3 or 4 times a game. You might get one. We're going to shut you down the rest of the way. And for the most part, it kind of has worked out that way. And
I just the modern NFL.
It is,
so
and I just think it's unfortunate. As aesthetically unpleasing as it is at times, I just think it's probably going to continue.
Man, we're entering Mel Kiper territory here. Outlaw the too high shell. Outlaw cover 2. That's where we're headed right now. But you're right.
Run them out of cover 2. Run them out of cover 2.
But if you can't run the ball, it's a problem. Now you just had me flashbacks to Mourinho when he was with Chelsea. That was his bread and butter. Just maybe not park the bus, but yeah, just play a bunch of defense and then hit him on the counter every once in a while.
On the counter.
That was it. Now I'm down the hole of Premier League. What are you doing to me here, Andy? So let's
reel it back in.
Let's talk about special teams because we have to, because they were once again a contributing factor to why this game was so messed up at times. And
yes,
man, it was, I will say, having sat through the game, I was in the stadium, not in the press box. I was in a seat in the stadium. Man, a whole bunch of stuff. I hate that stadium. MetLife is an abomination. And I don't know if you saw Warren Brinson's tweet where he said, first time I got to play on concrete, like the surface is garbage and I hate getting there. There's all sorts of logistical stuff that sucks about MetLife. But man, the wind in general in New York, the New York area yesterday, just walking out my front door, it was nuts. Like the wind was crazy. But then you put it in that stadium, they talk about the swirling winds. That's legit, right? So I'm trying not to get too crazy about Harvasek missing these 2 extra points, especially the first one, because I know it's a shank and whatever. But in pregame warmups, he and the operation were having issues on that end, the end where he missed. Kicking the other way, he was hitting from like 50.
Sure.
So it's like, I get it. It's part of the gig. It's part of the job description. And certainly you're playing in Lambeau this week. You're going to be expected to make kicks, whatever the weather might be. I'm just trying to reel in my frustrations with watching yet more missed kicks.
Yeah, the operation didn't look good, at least on the second missed field goal for sure. And then definitely, I'm sure the wind played a factor. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be a long snapping / holding / kicking expert.
Right.
The entirety of it, regardless of wind, just to the naked eye, didn't look great.
Yes,
and again, I'm not saying that's just on Haversick. It just the whole thing didn't look great. I've seen windy conditions before where that thing you see going right, we're going about to go right down, and then all of a sudden, and that the wind, you can see it just takes it. Man, both of these to some extent just look like immediate off the foot,
horrible,
kind of going in the wrong direction.
Yes, right.
I don't know enough. I could be 1,000,000% wrong. I'm willing to be wrong on this one.
Well, it might just be trying to compensate,
trying to overcompensate, and then it doesn't. I'm sure there's all of that plays a part. If we're talking like a 48-yard field goal, things like that, even though it's windy, extra point, I need to see good operation. And if that thing like at the end takes a little curve and hits the post and bounces off or something, okay, understandable. But like these were so ugly that I'm struggling a little bit to be like, yeah, it's fine. I'm sure it's fine.
Well, look, no one's saying it's fine. That's for sure.
That's fair.
But isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? We're here after weeks and weeks of talking about how Brandon McManus should be on IR. Oh, look at this. He's hurt. Andy, he's hurt.
He is hurt.
He's hurt again because he was playing while being hurt.
And if you just maybe kick Haversick in the games that there wasn't wind, and you kick him for that first month of the season, and maybe he does fine. In this game, maybe McManus is healthy enough to take after
by now. Hey, yeah, there's an idea.
Yeah.
Well, we're not gonna dwell on that because the Packers get the victory. It's a good day to be a Green Bay Packers fan. I mean, it's always a great day to be a Packers fan, but it's even sweeter and better after they win. We'll be previewing this big matchup with the Vikings. Oh man, I can't believe we're here. We're at the precipice of this divisional gauntlet. Andy. Yeah. Like at this point now it gets everything before this has felt like kind of a preamble, a precursor to this stretch right here. We're about to watch the Packers go on. With starting with this matchup with the Vikings. Now it gets real, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, buckle in. I'm ready for some November and December NFC North football. We get 3 in a row, including 2 in the next 10 or so days, something like that. Awesome. So yeah, it should be a ton of fun. I can't wait.
Can't wait. Talk to you soon, Andy. Thanks so much for your time, man.
I appreciate it, man.